Picture this: you finish your portfolio, type git push origin main, and walk to get a coffee. By the time you're back, your site is live at username.github.io, no servers, no bills, no deployment dashboards to log into. GitHub Pages turns a push into a live website in under 2 minutes, completely free. In this chapter we build the full CD pipeline that makes it happen, a Vite app, automated builds, and a production-ready deploy workflow. Everything runs on GitHub's infrastructure, and all you ever have to do is push. GitHub Pages is free static site hosting that lives inside your GitHub repository. You push your built files and GitHub serves them over HTTPS from a global CDN, no configuration, no cost. It works for anything that compiles to static HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, React apps built with Vite, Vue apps, documentation sites using VitePress or Docasaurus, and simple portfolio pages. There are 2 flavors: user pages served from the root of username.github.io, and project pages served from a subpath like username.github.io/reponame. That subpath distinction matters enormously for Vite, and we'll come back to it. The free tier gives you 1 GB of storage and 100 GB of monthly bandwidth, more than enough for most projects. The GitHub Pages CD pipeline has 4 steps, split across 2 jobs. A push to main triggers everything. The build job checks out the code, installs Node, runs npm ci and npm run build, then calls upload pages artifact to package the dist folder into a GitHub artifact. The deploy job waits for build to finish, then calls deploy pages to push that artifact to the pages CDN. The split into 2 jobs is intentional. The deploy job needs elevated OIDC permissions, and keeping it separate limits the blast radius if something goes wrong. From trigger to live site takes roughly 2 minutes on a cold runner, less with caching. GitHub Pages deployment uses OIDC OpenID Connect instead of stored secrets. That means your workflow needs 2 specific permissions declared at the top level. The pages:"write permission allows the workflow to push to your repository's pages environment. The ID token:"write permission lets the workflow request a short-lived JWT from GitHub's OIDC provider, which proves the deployment came from your trusted workflow without any secret ever leaving GitHub's infrastructure. You also need contents:"read to check out the source code. Declare only these 3, never use write all, which would grant your workflow unnecessary access to issues, pull requests, and more. The build job is a standard Node.js pipeline with 1 critical step at the end. Start with action/checkout to pull the source, then action/setup Node with Node version 20 and cache npm to get npm dependency caching for free. Run npm ci for a clean, reproducible install from the log file, never npm install in ci. Then npm run build, which tells Vite to compile everything into the dist folder. The final step is upload pages artifact, pointed at ./dist. This action packages the folder into a special pages compatible artifact that the deploy job can consume in a separate runner. Without this step, the deploy job has nothing to work with. The deploy job is elegantly minimal. It's essentially 1 action call, but 2 configuration fields make it production grade. The needs:"build line creates a sequential dependency. The deploy job won't start until build succeeds, which means a failed build never triggers a bad deploy. The environment block references the GitHub Pages environment by name, which enables GitHub's deployment tracking and protection rules. The URL field reads from steps.deployment.outputs.page_URL, which is the live URL returned by the deploy pages action. This surfaces the deployment link in the GitHub Actions UI and in PR checks. 1 step, 1 action, 2 minutes to live. Without concurrency control, 2 rapid pushes to main can trigger 2 deploy jobs simultaneously. If they both try to write to GitHub Pages at the same time, you can end up with a half-deployed site, some files from the old build, some from the new one. The concurrency block solves this with 2 settings. The group name pages puts all workflows sharing that name into a single slot, only 1 runs at a time. Setting cancel in progress to false means a running deploy is never interrupted, new jobs queue up and wait patiently. Use cancel in progress true on staging environments where you always want the very latest version deployed, but for production, finishing cleanly beats canceling halfway through. This is the most common gotcha for developers deploying Vite apps to project pages. When Vite builds your app, it writes absolute asset paths like /assets/index-abc123.js. On a user page served from the root, that path works perfectly. But project pages are served from a subpath username.github.io/myapp, so the browser looks for those assets at the wrong URL and gets a 404. The fix is a single line in vite.config.js, set base to /myapp/, matching your repository name exactly. Vite then prefixes all asset URLs with that path, and everything resolves correctly. If you're using a user page served from the root, skip this setting entirely. Before your first deploy, you must flip one switch in your repository settings, and this trips up a lot of developers. Navigate to your repo, click Settings, then Pages in the left sidebar. Under Build and Deployment, you'll see a source dropdown. By default it's set to deploy from a branch, which is the old Jekyll-based approach. Change it to GitHub Actions. Save, and you're ready. Without this change, the Deploy Pages action will fail with a confusing error about pages not being configured, even though your workflow looks perfect. It's a one-time setup step, and after that every push to main deploys automatically. GitHub Pages supports custom domains so your site appears at yourdomain.com instead of username.github.io. The critical implementation detail is the name file. Create a file named name in your public folder containing just your domain name on a single line. Because the public folder is included in the Vite build output, this file gets deployed with every push, which is exactly what you want. Without it, GitHub resets the custom domain setting on each deployment. After committing the name file, go to Settings, Pages, and enter your domain. Then add the appropriate DNS records at your registrar, for a records pointing to GitHub's IP addresses for Apex domains, or a name record pointing to username.github.io for subdomains. DNS propagation takes up to 24 hours, after which GitHub automatically provisions HTTPS via Let's Encrypt. Let's read the complete workflow file top to bottom. The name is deployed to GitHub Pages. The trigger is pushed to the main branch only. The permissions block grants the 3 minimal scopes we need. The concurrency block ensures deploys queue rather than race. The build job checks out, sets up Node 20 with npm caching, installs dependencies, builds the Vite app, and uploads the dist folder as a Pages artifact. The deploy job needs build to succeed first, references the GitHub Pages environment with the deployment URL output, and calls deploy pages with a step ID of deployment so the URL output is accessible. This is the entire file, nothing hidden, nothing extra. Copy it, adjust the base URL in vite.config.js, enable pages and settings, and you have a production CD pipeline. One of the most powerful features of the environment URL pattern is how it integrates with pull requests. When the deploy job completes, GitHub reads the URL field, which is populated from the deployment steps page_URL output, and displays it as a view deployment link right alongside your CI checks, and the PR reviewers can click straight through to the live preview without knowing the URL or digging through workflow logs. This turns GitHub Pages into a lightweight review app system. Every merged PR creates a timestamped deployment in the Environments tab, giving you a full history you can browse or link back to. Combined with branch protection rules, it creates a workflow where nothing ships without a visual review. Cold Vite builds on GitHub Actions take 2 to 3 minutes. With 2 layers of caching you can get that under 1 minute. The first layer is npm caching. Add cache:_npm to the setup node action and it automatically caches the .npm directory, keyed by your packagelock.json hash. This saves about 30 seconds on every run where dependencies haven't changed. The second layer is Vite's transform cache in node_modules/.vite. Add an action/cache step before setup node, pointing at that path with a cache key including the runner OS and the packagelock hash. On subsequent runs where only source files changed, Vite skips retransforming unchanged dependencies and shaves another 30 to 60 seconds. For next.js projects, cache the .next/cache directory. The savings on large apps can be 2 minutes or more per run. Here's a scenario that catches almost every developer deploying to GitHub Pages for the first time. Your Vite app is live at username.github.io/myapp, the HTML renders, the workflow finished green, but every CSS and JavaScript file returns a 404. The workflow permissions are set, the artifact was uploaded, the deploy job succeeded. What's missing? Think about what controls where Vite writes the asset paths in the built output. The answer is the base configuration in vite.config.js. Without base set to /myapp/, Vite writes absolute paths from the root, but the browser looks for them under the /myapp/ prefix. One line in the config file, and everything resolves correctly. Select the answer you think is right.